Welcome back, everyone. In this short video lesson, we're going to cover the basics of this compound miter saw right here. We're going to cover the safe operating procedures so that you can safely operate this machine tool. Now, the compound miter saw is used for cutting long pieces of things like this 2x4 to length. So it's not going to be used for cutting large boards. It's mostly for cutting things like 2x4 or 1x1. Those pieces down to size. The cool thing about the compound miter saw is that you can cut straight cuts, or you can also cut angled cuts. So we're going to show you how to do that right now. Before we dive in, we want to make sure that we've got our safety glasses on and that our fingertips to our elbows are free and clear of any entanglement hazards. One thing to note about this compound miter saw is that it is quite loud, so I recommend wearing some hearing protection while you're operating the machine. Let's get started. Here we have our DeWalt compound miter saw, trigger action, spring-loaded mechanism. It's mounted to a large sawhorse that has extendable arms, so if you needed to cut a long 2x4 or that type of piece, you could extend these arms out and that will allow you to cut long pieces. You would obviously have to move this to a spot where you could do that, but nevertheless, it is possible. It also has a ventilation built in, so this will help with dust mitigation. This saw uses a pressure trigger to activate the blade, and right now it is locked because of that safety latch, so pressing the safety latch down allows the user to depress the trigger and operate the saw. The saw does use a safety guard that will always remain on to protect the operator. This saw does have a work light. Not only does the work light illuminate the work area, it also helps when you're lining up your cut to correctly align the cut with the blade. The saw allows you to change the angle of the vertical position of the head, but we don't typically use that very often. The saw will lock down in place by pressing this pin in and pulling down on the saw. This is for transport or when not in use. And the saw does have a depth lock, so you can set this to stop at a certain depth. Most of the time we don't use this, but if you need to, please feel free to ask one of us and we will help you. The saw allows you to change the angle of the cut as well. This is called a miter. You simply unlock the saw handle and rotate the base and set it to your specific angle. You then lock the handle back in position. We'll show you how to make an angled cut as well as a straight cut. When cutting a 2x4 and using your hand as the clamp, make sure that your hand is as far away from the blade as possible while you're cutting. You don't want your hand anywhere near that blade when it's operating. If you don't feel comfortable using your hand as a clamp, there is a clamp that's installed on the machine, and it allows you to safely clamp your work so that you don't have to use your hand to clamp the work in place. Simply tighten the screw down and it will hold your work. When lining up a cut with the saw, you don't want to place your fingers on the pressure switch. Only use your palm to pull down on the saw to line up your cut. This prevents accidental turn-ons. To line up your cut, simply bring the blade down and slide the workpiece until your cut mark lines up with the blade. Then you're ready to cut. Always turn on the saw when it's in its fully upright position, then pull down and cut through the wood at a medium pace, not too fast, not too slow, and let go of the trigger when you're all the way through. Once the blade has stopped, you can pick up the blade and pull away your workpiece. Then unclamp your work and your cut is complete. To make an angled or miter cut, release the lock and slide your saw to the angle at which you want the cut. The saw will lock into place at specific angles, such as 45 degrees. Line up your cut and lock the handle back in place. position the blade along your line where you want the cut to be made. At the top of the stroke, depress the trigger and cut through the material. Slowly release the blade, wait for it to stop, and then you can pick up the blade. And there you have a nice angled cut. To clean up, take an air gun and spray the dust on the ground and sweep it up with the dustpan and broom. And that's it. You're set.